Do people sometimes feel a bit entitled? If I want to have all of this before I start performing,
When you look at human psychology, people do not add value if they don't feel valued consistently. One of the things we've gotten wrong in business and work is that we've assumed that people should be valued once they add value. Like we give them a rewards, perks, or money once they add value. But the opposite psychologically is true. Think about the last time you were energized to do something, and at the same time, you felt that you did not matter. Think about the last time you went above and beyond for someone who never checked in on you, never demonstrated care for you. Even the most hardened business people, the most results-oriented business people listening, can't answer those questions. It is hard for anything to matter to someone who doesn't first believe that they matter. I would be worried about entitlement if 30% of people didn't self-report they felt invisible at work. I would be worried about entitlement if 65% of people didn't perpetually experience underappreciation or feeling undervalued in work. I would be worried about entitlement if, on a Gallup survey, only 39% said they strongly agreed that someone at work cared for them as a person. And I would be worried about entitlement at work if 7 out of 10 people didn't say they were emotionally uninvested or disengaged in their work. It's not a coincidence that Generation Z is the loneliest generation in history and the generation that reports feeling the most unseen, unheard, unvalued by their parents, by bosses. And it's no coincidence that they also have
Zach, welcome to the Core Impact Podcast. I'm really excited to have you here. And I'd like to start directly by asking you, what is your intention behind writing The Power of Mattering?
Well, I imagine a world in which everybody realizes their own significance. You know, I have two kids, aged 11 and 8, and I want them to grow up in a world where they're never questioning whether they matter, whether they're worthy and capable. I think right now, today, our world needs more of people's unique voices, their unique strengths, their unique gifts in our organizations and in our societies more than ever. But the only way people are able to activate those gifts and strengths are if they believe that they have them and if they believe that they're worthy and capable. So that's my intention, is to turn this idea of making sure that people around us feel seen, heard, valued, and needed into a set of skills and practices and habits that can be repeated and practiced with intention. And I will say one other thing. I also want to fill the gap that's been left over the last 25 years of using digital technology to replace human interaction. And that gap is a massive skills gap that no one's talking about. We have lost collectively the skills to see, hear, value, and need others precisely when we need them the most.
Zach, I would like to hear from you. How do you differentiate, maybe with some examples, between belonging, inclusion, and mattering?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that belonging is like being picked for the team. So belonging is feeling welcomed and accepted and part of a group. Inclusion is being asked to play in the game. So inclusion is being invited and having access to take an equal active role in a group. But mattering is feeling that the team wouldn't be complete without you. Mattering is feeling significant to and important to the individuals in the group. This is very important because I can feel that I belong on a team, for example. I can feel that I'm part of a group. I could feel that I'm included. I can take an equal active role in a group, but have no one notice that I'm a caretaker for parents. Have no one be able to name my unique gifts or strengths relative to others. Have no one ever show me how I'm uniquely needed and how I'm missed when I'm gone. Mattering is feeling significant to and important to. And so it's like a three-legged stool, if you want to imagine this. When you think about a culture or community where people are thriving, they have to experience belonging. We have to be part of a group. That's part of our innate desire. We have to feel like we're included, that we have a pathway to be a participant in that group. But we have to feel that we're important to the individuals in that group.
So it's like 3 levels, right? First of all, belonging, and then I feel included, and then I feel that I matter. Do people sometimes feel a bit entitled when they hear about this? Because we are talking about business, for example, as an employee. If I want to have all of this before I start performing, then it might look like I'm a kind of entitled to get so much from the leaders before I start performing, right?
So, interestingly, when you look at human psychology, people do not add value if they don't feel valued
Mm,
consistently. One of the things we've gotten wrong in business and work is that we've assumed that people should be valued once they add value. Like we give them a rewards, perks, or money once they add
mm,
value.
mm,
But the opposite psychologically is true. We need to feel valued to add value. Think about the last time you were energized to do something, and at the same time, you felt that you or it did not matter. Think about the last time you went above and beyond for someone
mm,
who never checked in on you, never demonstrated care for you. Think about the last time you invested in a relationship or stayed in a relationship in which that person completely ignored you or said to you, I need you to put in your time first
mm,
or prove it to me,
mm,
right? Even the most hardened business people, I say that thinking about the most results oriented business people listening, can't answer those questions. And it's
mm,
because of a simple truth. From a motivational perspective, if I were to summarize the last 50 years of motivation research and work and performance at work research, I would summarize it in one sentence. It is hard for anything to matter to someone who doesn't first believe that they matter.
mm,
You can't expect someone to care if they don't feel cared for.
mm,
So, so I think that we're getting ahead of ourselves when we talk about entitlement, because I would be worried about entitlement if 30% of people didn't self-report they felt invisible at work. I would be worried about entitlement if 65% of people didn't perpetually experience underappreciation or feeling undervalued in work. I would be worried about entitlement if 39% of people in a Gallup survey said only 39% said they strongly agreed that someone at work cared for them as a person.
mm,
And I would be worried about entitlement at work if 7 out of 10 people didn't say they were emotionally uninvested or disengaged in their work, despite all of the programs and perks and pay.
mm, mm,
So entitlement is believing that you matter too much. It's almost akin to narcissism,
mm,
but uh, that is not what the data says is happening. We're
mm,
not even close to creating cultures of entitlement.
mm, mm. I mean, now already you mentioned so many things that I like to dive deep into.
Mm. Can I go back to something as well with
Yes,
regard to
yes, yes,
entitlement?
yes, yes.
Many people say to me, Zach, this younger generation, they just need a participation trophy,
Mm, mm,
right? Or they want a participation trophy.
mm,
It's not a coincidence that Generation Z is the loneliest generation in history
mm,
and the generation that reports feeling the most unseen, unheard, unvalued by their parents, by bosses, by the people around them. And it's no coincidence that they also have the lowest quality interpersonal interactions. Someone would not need a trophy to give them a sense of significance if they felt it every day. So I actually think entitlement is an outcome of not feeling that you matter in everyday interactions. So people say, hey, I deserve this. I need this. Hey, I matter more than you think. Give me this gold star. Give me this trophy. Entitlement is a reaction
mm,
to perpetual experiences of feeling slighted, feeling unseen, feeling unheard, feeling unvalued. In fact, Robert Emmons, he's one of the most preeminent researchers on gratitude, right? So gratitude. And one of the critiques of his work is if I show my people gratitude, they're going to develop entitlement, if I continually show gratitude. But what his research finds is the opposite. Experiencing gratitude actually increases our positive emotions of joy, of flow, of
Right.
passion, of energy, and decreases negative emotions like anger, envy, jealousy. And ironically, envy, jealousy, feeling slighted are all the things that predict actions of entitlement. So, one of the best things you could do to create a non entitled employee is to regularly remind them of their significance in an authentic way
Mm.
from a scientific perspective.
Mhm.
Okay, so now we could go to the next question, but I thought I would say that because a lot of people say to me, I don't want to inflate someone's ego, I don't want to give
Yeah,
them
yeah,
entitlement.
yeah.
Um, but really entitlement and even clinical narcissism, for example, one of the predictors of narcissism is perpetual experiences of unmet mattering in childhood. Because there's two things that happen when we don't feel that we matter. We either withdraw, isolate, quiet quitting, withhold information, or when we don't feel that we matter, we act out in desperation. Hey, look at me, I matter more
You think?
than you think.
Uh, I like that you said we can stay here because I think we can stay a bit talk a bit deeper about it before we jump to the next point. That it's a survival instinct, and that's the most important thing. If you don't feel that you are safe, right, you are surviving at your workplace, then you cannot thrive. So this is another point here you're mentioning, because here when you withdraw or you feel desperate, like even it's a fight or flight, right? This is survival mode you're in when you don't feel that you matter.
Yeah, so I think all of life, when you think about individuals who thrive in life, thriving in life is being able to explore from a secure base. That's all thriving life is, being able to explore from a secure base. In work, it's being able to try, fail, experiment, take risks, learn
Uh,
because you have a secure base to come back to. You already know that you matter enough to another human being because you're a human being, that is not threatened. That's why the most innovative organizations
uh,
have cultures of deliberate psychological safety.
uh,
Psychological safety is mattering in disguise. Because from the moment we're born, we are wired to be important to other people. We would not live, we would not survive if we didn't matter enough to another person so that person would keep us alive. I mean, think about that. Think about that. You would not be here listening to this podcast, running your business, having a team, if you did not matter enough to another person so that person kept you alive.
uh,
That's the same is true for every one of your employees, every one of your customers, every one of your clients, every one of your stakeholders. We're built with that survival instinct to matter. That instinct to matter is akin to the instinct to eat or the instinct to sleep. If it's threatened, our bodies and our brains go on high alert. As we grow up and go to work, that instinct turns into the need to feel seen, heard, valued, and needed. Just like your instinct to sleep doesn't go away because you clock in, your instinct to matter doesn't go away because you clock in. And just like when an instinct to sleep isn't met or an instinct to eat isn't met, your body and your brain reacts accordingly. It thinks it's desperate to survive.
uh,
And so we gossip, we complain, we don't put forth effort, we protect ourselves, we disengage. I'll use disengagement as an example. Disengagement is not a signal of apathy. Disengagement is a signal of self-protection.
uh,
So I'm not going to input effort. I'm going to protect myself from inputting effort that's unrewarded. I'm not going to put if my voice has been ignored or shut down, or I've been told I have to put in my time or add value so I'm valued.
uh,
I'm gonna self-protect. I'm not gonna share my voice. I'm not gonna give my ideas if I've been ignored. I'm protecting myself. That's what disengagement is. It's self-protection. Self-protection from who? From us as leaders, as our organizations, of our systems. But we can turn that on its head if we meet that need.
While you are listening to the Core Impact podcast, please take a moment to pause and share with me. How do you feel? Are you enjoying the conversation, feeling inspired, or something else? I would love to know your feelings in the comments. Do you have a story that you can share about either a team or organization that you worked with where when people or employees felt mattered, the performance and the profit of this team or the organization increased?
Yeah, I mean, one client comes to mind. It's a company called American Express Global Business Travel, and they employ travel agents across the globe, thousands of them. They have 500 plus leaders managing these very complex remote workers who are responsible for business travel for many corporations. Well, imagine the morale of that company in COVID when travel ground to a halt.
Mm.
But they never quite recovered because even after COVID, voluntary attrition was very high. Customer satisfaction wasn't as high, engagement was low. And I remember one of the executives called me and said, Zach, I think that we have a mattering problem. I think people have
Mm.
forgotten that they and their work matters. And that's what's causing the morale issue. And so what we did is we got all 800 global leaders together and we asked them, when do you most feel that you matter in work? What is happening around you? What are people doing? And we asked them to codify these skills. And we introduced this concept of mattering. And I remember just even after that session, one senior leader wrote me and said, Zach, this session gave me permission to be human again at work. Because what happened is all of the leaders didn't think about big actions like getting a promotion, getting a pay raise, meeting a quarterly earnings goal. They all mentioned very small interactions in which someone saw them,
Mm.
heard them, thanked them, showed them how they were needed. And it was this big eye-opening moment that mattering doesn't happen through big actions, it happens through small interactions. And now the leader said, this is something we can do something about. We can change how we interact with our people. So the next thing we did was we got everybody together, we got them into small groups, and we had them identify actions, behaviors that they would commit to on a daily basis to make sure everyone felt noticed, seen and heard, affirmed that their work made a difference and needed. And we had over 500 different behaviors, and we narrowed them down to 15 core behaviors. And then what happened is that we then rolled it out to all the employees and said, here's what you can expect from your leader every day. And here's what to do when it's not happening. And then we developed their leadership development capacities based on those 15 behaviors. We developed the blueprint where the organization said every employee should feel noticed, affirmed, and needed here by these behaviors from their leader. We assessed the leaders, self-assessed them on it, and then assessed their teams on it.
Mm.
And voluntary attrition dropped 50% in a year and a half. Engagement scores went up as the highest unit in the entire company. And customer retention, there was a consistent indicator of increased customer retention.
Mm.
A 50% voluntary attrition drop in a year and a half for remote distributed travel agents is massive. And why is that? Well, it's not only because the organization said you deserve to feel that you matter here. It's because the leaders themselves felt what it meant to matter through thinking about those moments and then committed to behaviors themselves that they committed to be measured on. And this is the thing, right? Profit, performance, these are all lagging indicators,
Mm.
right? They're lagging indicators of human energy. If I asked a CEO to name one financial metric that's not mediated through how a human being feels, they can't
Mm.
name one. So
Mm.
what's the ideal state of a human being who's performing and producing? Well, if I ask anybody that, they will say, well, they're motivated. You can't be motivated without feeling that you matter.
Mm. It's this whole like the questions. Sometimes when I ask you a question, you ask me questions back, make me think, or give me some examples. It is really a core issue. Like when you think about, yes, of course. I mean, I worked in finance, and I think about it. Yes, what brings profit, what brings revenues, in the end, when people believe in it, when in the products, for example, and then if they don't think that is something that matters to them, for example, this product or helping them in a way, it all comes back to the human side of business. And from there, you can always have different kind of connections. From there, you can have the profit. Yes, yes.
One of the things that happens is because the lagging indicators are so easily measured and visible, it's much easier for us to approach those with rigor. But when it comes to regenerating human energy, we sort of leave it up to chance.
Mm.
But we're setting ourselves up for this finite game, as my friend Simon Sinek calls it, where we're constantly chasing results to try to get a result. It's like it's like a kindergartner who's learning cause and effect, and you tell them to try to get an effect by pursuing the effect.
Mm,
You can't.
mm,
Every effect has a cause, but many organizations simply don't rigorously pursue the cause, which is regenerating human energy needed to perform with skill and with uh, deliberate practice as they do the lagging indicators. And so you're constantly in this cycle of
mm,
up and down performance, roller coaster performance. Every 5 years, there being a labor shortage when the labor market opens up. We live in this roller coaster because we've expected people to care about our organizations and about their work for so long without doing the rigorous work to make sure they feel cared for.
mm.
It's a
Yeah,
finite
and
game.
yeah. And in the end, if I think about the employees, most of the employees from all the studies I know and my relationships, when they want to share why they matter or why they like what they do or they feel that like enjoy what they are doing, mostly they will not talk about the salary first of all. But many leaders they see it the first thing like I'm giving them money, they should do everything.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Yeah, um, money is compensation, right? We call it compensation for a reason. Do you know what the word compensate means? All it means is to make up for.
Mm,
So all money is you're making up for that person's lost time and skill they're giving to you. So money makes up for someone's time. Uh, Money at best can create a not dissatisfied employee.
mm,
Like research is very clear on this that job satisfaction has a lot to do with compensation level. So if you pay someone well, it's likely that they'll be not dissatisfied. But a not dissatisfied employee is not a motivated employee.
mm,
When you look at the
mm,
other side, a satisfied and motivated employee is one who's being paid well and they experience purpose, relationships, autonomy, all the things that come from a sense that we matter.
mm,
So a lot of organizations, and this is a theory by the psychologist Frederick Herzberg, it's called hygiene motivation theory. It's been well studied. A lot of organizations focus on hygiene, benefits, perks, money. That's like brushing your teeth, but brushing your
mm,
teeth doesn't make you healthy, right? So just doing basic hygiene doesn't make you healthy. It just makes you able to live the rest of your life. Well, the rest of your life in an organization is feeling that you matter, having purpose, having high quality relationships, having trusting relationships, having autonomy, being able to take some ownership over something. And those are the things that we don't tend to approach with rigor in organizations. We don't tend to equip our leaders with the skills to do those things, or we promote leaders and just hope they'll do the right thing in a system that incentivizes them not to. And so,
mm.
as an organization, you have to say, are we just focusing on hygiene and expecting people to be motivated? Are we expecting ourselves to be healthy by just brushing our teeth and not running, not cultivating our relationships, not reading, not um and oftentimes organizations will say, "Ah, yeah, yes."
I'm curious also to hear from you, like on a daily basis, how do you make sure that when you have any project or you work with people, how do you either measure or sense if people around you who are working with you have this sense of mattering, feel that they matter to you?
I think one question is very helpful for everybody to ask the people in their lives is when you feel that you matter to me, what am I doing?
Mm. So I
Right?
ask it consistently.
Yeah, when you feel that you matter to me, what am I doing? And write those
Mm,
things down. If they don't have anything to say, that's a problem, right?
mm,
Um, but the other thing I think is, one of the things that we've done in the last decade is we've really sought to codify the essential practices. I mean, so if I ask you, when you feel that you matter to someone else, what are they doing? If you're like some of the people we've interviewed, you'll most likely think of one, two, or three things: feeling noticed, feeling seen or heard, feeling affirmed, feeling that you and your unique gifts make a difference, and feeling needed, feeling that someone relies on you.
mhm,
And so, a good litmus test for a leader or anybody is to say, am I making sure that people around me feel noticed, affirmed, and needed? How am I showing up in everyday interactions to make sure people feel noticed, affirmed, and needed? Or you can ask yourself these three reflection questions every day. Who do I need to notice more? Who do I need to see more? Who am I under noticing? Just bringing that to conscious awareness helps make this not common sense and turns it to common practice.
Mm,
The second question you can ask is, who around me do I need to show more how they add value? Um, and how can I show them? And then the third is, who needs to be shown how I rely on them? And so again, it's really about bringing this idea of cultivating mattering from common sense to common practice. That noticed, affirmed, and needed model helps give us an evaluative question to examine ourselves through. But also, when you start asking these questions and start scanning your environment for gaps in mattering, it can really help as well. And then I would say the ultimate way to do this is to assess it, to measure it.
mm,
We have leaders measure and self-assess the frequency at which they're doing behaviors that help people feel noticed, affirmed, and needed. And then we measure their teams on the how frequently their teams observe those behaviors.
mm.
And then we have them talk to one another. And really that's the gold standard, right? Of um of thinking about leading others from a behavior skill first perspective and measuring yourself on frequency of which you deploy those skills, and measuring people on the frequency at which they observe you deploying those skills and making sure those sync up. I mean,
Mm.
that's really the gold standard. But I think starting with asking that question, when you feel that you matter to me, what am I doing? And really hearing what people are saying, and if they're saying something, is a great place to start.
It's very interesting that you are measuring this also in organizations. Like, how do you, like, on what basis you say, like, how many times the employee uh, give
Yeah.
feedback to the leader? And
I'll give an example.
yeah,
One of the items is, on a weekly basis, how frequently do you name your team members' unique strengths
okay.
back to them?
Mm,
Okay. So
mm,
then I, as a leader, if I'm quarterly, I like quarterly assessments. If I'm quarterly taking this assessment on a weekly basis, how frequently am I doing that? The goal is not to get to 5, which is always, because then you'd just be constantly affirming somebody. The
mm.
goal is simply awareness. So if I say, "Oh, it's like a 2 this quarter. I haven't been doing that much." That, as a leader, then you can say, "Oh gosh, I really have to be more deliberate about naming
S-
people's unique strengths."
So two in a week is not enough. Two
Well,
times.
no, 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 not 2 times. What I mean, the 1 to 5 is 1 not at all, 5 is always.
Ah, okay.
It's more, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So like on an average week, how frequently are you doing this? And it's simple awareness. Like, one question is, how often are you checking in on your people? Well, if I were to take it last week, I was traveling, right? And
mm,
someone that works for me, Emerald, I don't check in with her that much on that week. So it would have been pretty low, but this is important data for me, because if I take this assessment, or I even do this mental assessment, and I know that when I travel, I'm a worse noticer. I'm not as good at noticing her. I can then say to her, which I do, "Hey, I know that this week when I travel, I'm not as good at checking in. I want to let you know that I have an hour on Friday that I will dedicate for you to call me with whatever you need, and I will respond."
mm,
Because again, you bring this from common sense to common practice. The assessment is meant for awareness. So that's what that looks like in action. And then if I ask her, "Hey, how frequently am I checking in on you?" and she says never, and I say that I'm doing it sometimes, then I can say, "Hey, tell me what more do you need from me?"
mm,
And it's a very productive conversation. And these are the conversations that many leaders are not having. They're having
mm,
conversations about how to get people to produce more. They're not asking questions and having conversations about the craft of leading people,
mm,
but the fundamentals of the craft of leading people, which I believe are seeing, hearing them, valuing them, checking in on them, showing them how they're needed. And so that's
mm,
how self-assessments and team assessments can work really well in providing some objective indicators of whether you're doing these things that so often are left up to intuition, or they've been labeled soft for 50 years. We call these
mm,
things soft or simple.
mm,
And anytime we see something as soft or simple, we're susceptible to an overconfidence bias. We think we're better at it than we are. We think that we're doing it more than we are. And it's almost always, not the case when it comes to these essential relational components of our lives
mm,
and work.
mm. The conversation is so insightful. I'm very excited, really, to have this conversation with you, because you are opening up so many questions also in my mind. I'm gonna notice one thing that you said, that you're gonna ask her. If she tells you that it's not enough, like she doesn't feel that she matters enough, let's say, then you will ask her. You become curious instead of telling her, okay, I know the solution, let's do this.
Yeah, or what do you need? Or say I'm really, really busy, and I say, these are really tough weeks. It's really tough for me to check in. What would work well for you within that context? This is not a matter of like giving everything they need, right? This is a matter of like co-constructing the experience we're having
Mm,
together.
mm,
I mean, too many of our conversations are about what we're doing and not how we're doing it with one another. The best teams that I actually observe, they spend their time together not updating each other on what they're doing, but on resolving and coming to better ways of working together.
mm,
They talk more about how we're doing what we're doing together, not just what we're doing. But if I go and sit in the majority of meetings in like corporate culture and I just observe them, they're like update fests. All people do is, what's the update on this? What's the status on this? When's
yeah.
this going to be done? Here's where we're at about meeting our quarterly goals. Here are where the numbers are at. And nobody talks about how we're doing the work together, which is the leading indicator for those numbers that you're trying to get up. But the best teams and relationships that I've observed between leader and follower, they tend to talk more about how the work's getting done with one another. Because at the end of the day, all work is creative relationships with other people.
Mm,
Work is creative relationships. You're creating something new with others.
mm. That's why you have to be in this creative mode, not in the survival mode. So, also again about questions, I like how much you emphasize on asking exploratory questions, as you say,
Uh-huh.
not evaluation questions. What was the other one? Is like
Yeah.
judgmental kind of questions. So even when you ask again, Emerald, her name.
Yeah, yeah, Emerald.
Emerald. Then you ask her, okay, um, what do I need? Let's again the question is like, what do I need to do for you? Or it's not like how the first thing that comes to your mind now. How are you gonna do this and this? How when are you gonna get this done, etc. Is not really taking care about her, and this all comes back to practices of mattering, right?
Yeah, and that first practice area is noticing. And one of the and the leaders who do this well that we observe tend to have some process to observe people. I mean, note down what they observe and then share back what they observe. Part of being a really good observer is asking good questions. And we tend to ask really bad questions. How's it going? How was your day? How was the meeting? How's work going? And I like to call those greetings because they really just open up a conversation, but they're not really questions. They're greetings. And good leaders tend to go beyond the greetings. I mean, there are characteristics. There are characteristics of quality questions. There are three of them. They should be clear, not vague. So, like a vague question is, how are your projects going? Right.
Mm,
A clear question is, what's taking up most of your attention this morning about that project? Right. Attention is the object. Time frame this morning allows people to answer it. It's clear.
mm,
The question should also be open, not closed. So, are you going to get that done by Friday? Is a closed question. It's yes or no. But hey, what are some barriers you're facing in getting that done by next Friday? Is an open question.
mm,
And then the last one, and I think this is a very sneaky one that I've observed, is that we tend to ask too many evaluative questions, right?
yeah.
So, an evaluative, as you mentioned, is any question in which I am in a position of power to judge the quality of your response. Anytime we ask an evaluative question, you'll give me a self-defensive answer. So my kid
Mm,
plays soccer, and if he comes home from soccer practice and I say, "Hey, did you hustle today?" Do you think he's really going to be forthcoming and be like, "No, Dad, actually not. I didn't hustle. I was lazy." Of course not.
mm,
If we ask someone, "Hey, are you going to get that project done by Friday?" Someone's going to say, "Of course, yeah, of course, I got it." But an exploratory question gets the same data, but gives the power back to the person. If I say to my
mm,
kid when he comes back from soccer practice, instead of, "Did you hustle today?" which will put him on the defensive. If I say, "Hey, what's an effort you're proud of from today?"
mm,
I'm actually going to get the same data. I'm going to see what effort he has, but I give the power back to him. Or if I say, "What's an improvement you noticed at practice from last practice?"
mm,
I'm going to get data on whether he's improving and whether he's putting forth effort than if I just say, Hey, did you try that new thing you said you were going to try? Evaluate it. The same is true if you say, "What's the status on that project?" Hey, why aren't the numbers where they should be this quarter? Or if you say, "Hey, what are some roadblocks you're coming up against that I can help with in getting the numbers to where they need to be?" It's a much different question, but you're getting data. And the key is that all these things help you better understand people. You can't lead somebody you don't understand. You can't
Mm,
coach somebody you don't understand. So when you're asking these questions, you're gathering the data you need to lead them better, again, which is part of the craft of leadership. And it's a key
mm,
practice to make sure people feel noticed. And
mm.
I would say it's one of the easiest to change and start
Easiest to
doing.
change. Okay. Easiest to change also in the long term.
Yeah, I mean, like it's easiest. Like you could, if you're listening to this podcast, you can ask an open, clear, and exploratory question in your next conversation
Mm,
and immediately improve that relationship.
mm. Yeah. It's very practical because now I'm thinking about it like, how clear am I with my questions to you?
Well, no, so here's the thing. So here's the thing about this, right? Is that I teach what I need to hear the most. So I don't,
Mm,
I still ask you, how are you doing today? Right. But I
mm,
try to make sure and go through, go then go beyond that greeting and say, what have you been working on before we connected today? Right. To get something more concrete. It's not about being perfect. It's about what
mm,
you're aspiring to.
mm,
Again, like, right, it's a craft. So if we don't have an aim, if we don't have a goal, if we don't have tangible practices that we're trying to be disciplined in, which when it comes to the human stuff in organizations, we tend to not, then we won't likely pursue it, right?
mm,
So this is just helping us to pursue how we want to show up. I mean, which
mm,
is what leadership is. Leadership is showing up in interactions. Leadership is how you show up in interactions. When we ask people what makes their leaders great, they never talk about their quarterly earnings reports, the big product launch, how hard they drove their team to perform beyond the KPIs that quarter. I mean, have you ever heard anybody get emotionally excited about a KPI? No, they talk about their leader trusts them. Their leader has their back. Their leader helped them, allowed them to try something really cool and trusted them with responsibility. They were able to experiment at work and their leader had their back. Their leader took an interest in their life. When their parent was sick, the leader let them have a couple hours off to get that sorted and then came back and was compassionate to them. That is what leadership is.
mm,
You may be measured by your organizations on your KPIs, but people remember you for how you show up in interactions.
mm. And the other thing that when you give others feedback, you came a bit across this, that it is it has to be concrete. It's not should not be generic. For example, I hear a lot like, "You are wonderful, good job." Okay, that doesn't give me any information and doesn't help me understand what was good about it and how did this improve your life or your work, etc. But it should be specific, also recognition, as you said it right. So, what impact does that have on teams and organizations when they go deeper with their feedback?
Yeah, so there's two things. I mean, when it comes to positive feedback, we're often relatively untrained at giving positive feedback, right? I mean, think about how many sessions you've gone to training you on how to give critique or negative feedback. Probably a lot. How about how many sessions have you gone to on the techniques for giving effective positive feedback?
Not much.
Probably not so much, right?
Yeah.
Because we expect it to happen, but that positive feedback is so important because as you say, it helps people name what they do and how they did it. One of the things that positive feedback that is specific does is it satisfies our need for uniqueness.
Mm,
There are researchers that show that we have an inherent need for uniqueness relative to other people. That's why generic praise doesn't work very well. Just saying thank you at the same time every day doesn't work very well. We have this inherent
mm,
need for uniqueness. So one of the things that you can do is start giving more meaningful gratitude. Anytime you say thank you or good job, make sure that you're describing when and where it happened. So noticing the setting. This helps you not become the supervisor or leader that just says thank you at the same time every day to the same people. Like, hey, at the beginning of this podcast, when you said this, be very, very clear. Make sure that you're naming the behaviors. So what did the person actually do? So, hey, at the beginning of this podcast, when we were getting introduced, you described to me in detail how important the way that I word things in my work has been for you. I mean, it's very specific. Name the gifts that person used. Now, this is important. Everybody brings 4 gifts. They bring their strengths, what they love to do and what they're good at. They bring their perspective, how only they see the work and the world. They bring their wisdom, what only they can teach you and the team because of their experience. And they bring their purpose, their unique impact, what's lost when they're gone. So name people's gifts. So, at the beginning of this session today, podcast session, you were telling me about how the way I word things in my research means a lot to you. You were very attentive, very intentional, very analytical. I could tell that. And then finally, the last piece is to show people the impact they make. So what impact does it have on you? Well, coming onto a podcast when I don't know somebody, it's helpful to know that the person resonates with my work. I feel more energized, ready to be here. And hopefully, if your listeners get one thing from this podcast, because I'm energized to be here, that changes the trajectory of someone's career. That's because of you. So thanks for starting the podcast that way.
Yeah, it's just very important to be aware of these small things because it has a ripple effect, right?
Yeah. And if I can do it right now with something that happened 10 minutes ago, I mean, people, if you're a leader here, you're an expert in your people, think of someone you need to thank or show gratitude for. Just in your mind, just say, okay, when was it? What were those behaviors? What gifts can I notice in them and name back to them? And what's the impact that it had? And just thinking about it as a leader makes you feel better. Because we also find that showing gratitude, research shows that showing gratitude gives us more energy. I mean, you're going to be much more energized after that conversation than if you just send the email, hey, thanks everybody for your hard work. Instead of saying, hey, I just want to let you know, I noticed that you persevered, you were incredibly creative. And let me tell you something, when that product went off to our salespeople, I could tell that they were excited about the work that you did. So thank you. It's totally different. It reminds you of your significance and what you're doing as a leader. I would say
Zach,
also on the flip
yeah.
side, on the flip side, constructive criticism, constructive feedback also has to be affirmative. There's some research in Harvard Business Review that shows that upwards of 38% of performance improving feedback actually decreases performance. And one of the reasons why is that researchers find that the people don't feel that they're seen, heard, or understood by the person giving the feedback. In other words, people critique before they demonstrate care and support. But when feedback is taken well, there tends to be 3 things. The person demonstrates their belief in them. Like, hey, I'm telling you this because I believe in you and the impact that you can make. Critique works when we name the person's gifts and strengths they have to make the change. And I see you're really creative and I need you to use that to make this change. And then critique works when we offer our support, tangible support. Hey, and I'm here to help. I want to just do a call every Tuesday at 8:30 a.m. just to check in on how you're doing and see if I can help you make this change. Just those 3 things can make it almost twice as likely that someone will improve their performance.
Yeah, Zach, I wanted to tell you that I've been reflecting on the podcast journey. Now, I haven't counted, but I think you are number 34 now from the guests. And that made me also rethink about the leaders or the people that inspired me, like you, how I was assuming my interactions with them will be and how it is actually. And it's a lot about when we talk, I used to think like an expert in some field, he's a very special person and the attention it should be on him or her. But really leaders, now you are making me also feel unique and you are telling me also you're appreciating something that I told you. And it's a lot about this really being leader is making people feel that they matter in the way you were saying it. And it's not about being special also. That's something that it's like neither of us or no one who's listening to us is special, meaning that they are better than others, but they are unique. And this uniqueness, you mentioned it many times.
Yeah, I mean, real leaders don't spend their time telling other people how special they are.
Mm,
They make it easier for their people to see how special they are. And I think that that's what it is. I mean, I think the real opportunity of leadership is to illuminate in others what they don't yet see in themselves. I mean, that's the whole purpose of leadership is to regenerate the human energy needed to perform and produce. And to regenerate that energy, people have to know and see their unique gifts reflected back to them. They have to see that they're going somewhere worthwhile that has an impact. They have to see that someone believes in them, that they have that secure base. I mean, that's what leadership is.
mm,
Leadership is not meeting the numbers.
mm.
It's being responsible for the energy of the people that meet the numbers.
Zach, is there one, two, three misconceptions about the power of mattering we haven't talked about that you'd like to mention and
Yeah.
clarify?
Yeah, one is that um mattering and showing people how they matter is soft or coddling.
Mm,
I had somebody say to me, "Zach, you expect me to coddle my people like they're newborn babies, reaching out for significance." I had someone say that to me. Coddling is overprotecting people from challenge. That's what coddling is. Mattering is preparing them for the challenge, making sure they know that they're worthy and capable of meeting that challenge. So it's not coddling. You're actually investing in the very resources that predict resilience against what's hard. Coddling is protecting people, overprotecting people. And that's not what mattering is. I mean, I think the second misconception is that this is just a nice to have,
mm,
right? Oh, well, this will work in certain industries, not in my industry because we're results oriented.
mm,
Again, every person in every occupation wants to feel that they matter. And another misconception is that it's generational,
mm,
right? So that older generations, they didn't need to feel that they matter. These Gen Zers, millennials, they want to feel that they matter. If I can ask everybody that's listening right now, I mean, raise your proverbial hand if you'd prefer to feel unimportant. I don't think anybody would say, "Ah, yeah, me,
yeah.
I'm a baby
Mhm.
boomer, I'm a Gen Xer. I'd really prefer to feel invisible." These Gen Zers and millennials, they just want to feel seen, heard, valued, needed, want to have purpose. What's wrong with them? No, it sounds ridiculous because it is. Because mattering is a universal need that cuts across generation. It's not generational. It's not a nice to have. It's a core need. And if you choose to meet it, you'll be met with engagement, motivation, performance. If you choose not to meet it, you'll likely use fear, control, um, external rewards to try to drive performance, which is what many organizations do. And the problem is that fear and rewards only last until the next act of cruelty or the next reward.
Mm, mm,
Mattering lasts much longer.
mm.
So those are three
So that
big misconceptions that I hear.
that it's a soft skill or something soft. Let's
That it's
it's something
soft. It's
soft.
it's soft.
Uh,
Yep.
yeah, and the second one is nice to have, and the third one is it's
Well,
generational.
well, it's soft, and the second, I guess, is that it's coddling, somehow
Okay.
coddling or
Yeah. Yeah.
producing
Yeah.
entitlement, and the third is that it's generational or it's just
Mm,
a preference.
mm. Yeah. Let me come back to the questions I wanted to ask you first. What is the most exciting project that you've worked on in the last 12
Oh,
months? Maybe it taught you something new about leadership or anything that you didn't think about before.
mm, the most exciting project. Well, I mean, the most exciting project has been putting this book into the world. It
Mm,
launched last May.
mm,
And so I've been out talking about the book, and there's two things that tend to happen when I talk about this topic. One is either people will line up and say, "Oh, this names what I haven't been experiencing,"
mm,
which was an unintended outcome where people are like, "Wow, this names something I haven't been experiencing. I feel that I belong. I feel like I'm included in my group, but I feel that no one would even notice if I was gone." And that's been surprising and sort of difficult.
mm,
But the second outcome is that people want to relate to people in this way. Even the people that come back to me and say, "Hey, you want me to coddle my people?" Or why would I thank them? I'm giving them money. The people I interact with in Q&As like that, usually at the end of the Q&A will be like, "So tell me more about how I do this." I think leaders are yearning for ways to be better leaders.
Mm,
And I think that they want to be different than those who have led them. And I think then when you give them the insight that your next great leadership act is your next interaction, and you can do something about disengagement and low motivation in your next interaction. I think people, even the most skeptical people, get really excited about that. And I think that's what's been exciting for me. And then, I'm really excited that there's 2 new books on mattering coming out this month. There's 2 very popular books out there that are bestsellers now on mattering coming out this month. And whenever something is popular, it means people aren't experiencing it. So I think we're
mm,
at a tipping point. I think we're at a
mm,
tipping point, and that's all very
mm,
exciting. So it's not one
mm.
project. I think it's just continuing to put this out in the world, see the feedback people get. I especially love the people that desperately don't want to believe this is important because uh, I find that those are actually the people that need it the most themselves.
Mm,
I have a lot of empathy for leaders today.
mm,
If my self-worth was dependent on a quarterly earnings report, I don't know how I would feel about myself. I don't know who I would become. So we've created systems that incentivize people not to do this. And it's very hard to really take a look at that when you're in the system and to
mm,
say, wow, this system is making me someone who I don't want to be. And when
mm,
people can get out of that and then course correct, I think it's very empowering for leaders. And that's been really exciting.
mm. Zach, there is another thing that I'm curious to hear from you about. What is the most surprising or underestimated data or research you came across while working on The Power of Pattern as a book or any projects that's related to it?
Oh,
Like to tell me,
you-
yeah,
yeah. So
in depth.
what's really surprising about mattering as a concept psychologically is that it's intertwined with others. So, one of the best ways to feel that you matter is to show people how they matter.
Mm,
And it's interesting because
mm,
a lot of people, like, we've grown up in this self-help world where people say, "Oh, you sit in your office and chant self-affirmations to yourself or read books on how to develop confidence." But what we found is that actually for example, the best way to develop confidence is not to become more confident, it's to find someone who has your back.
mm,
Where you can go out, try, fail, experiment, and learn because someone's supporting you. One of the best ways to remember how you matter is to name your grocery store clerk by their name and ask how they're doing.
mm,
To your delivery driver, to thank them for what they just delivered for you, to tell them, hey, if it wasn't for you, this wouldn't be possible. And then all of a sudden you see their reaction and you start saying to yourself, wow, like what I do makes a difference. So one of the surprising things has been this boomerang effect of mattering, that the more we show others how they matter, like the more we give meaningful gratitude, that example I gave, the more we actually see the evidence that we matter. And it's
mm,
a virtuous cycle. And I think that's
mm,
really exciting.
mm. Yeah. And you're reminding me of myself. In the past, I used to go to grocery stores or want to buy whatever. And I go again and again, and I treat people like they are no one. And
Yeah,
okay, nothing happens. I mean, okay, strangers. But recently, when I started talking to them, they became my friends. It doesn't have to, like, we don't have to spend hours, but like saying a joke or how's your day or something very small, but they keep remembering me. I feel better.
absolutely.
Yeah,
We all do.
yeah,
I mean, we all do.
yeah.
Like, I just yesterday I was picking up my kid from school. I was kind of tired and I could just sit there and like pretend I'm on my phone and not talk to any of the other parents. And or I could talk to some other parents, even though I'm an introvert, see how they're doing, see how their kids are doing. And I feel more energized.
Mm,
Like, even though I'm an introvert, even though it's
mm,
hard for me to do,
mm.
I walk away feeling like, oh, I did something this afternoon. And it's just, I gave somebody a conversation. And oftentimes that's enough.
It's very interesting, and I heard it also from Simon Sinek before. that he calls himself also an introvert, your
Yeah.
friend, and also you are calling yourself as an introvert, although you are
Yeah.
also a
Yeah.
very well known speaker.
Yeah. I'm very introverted. When I'm talking about something that intellectually interests me,
Mm,
I'm not. I'm like, I could talk about it forever. But it's hard for me to make small talk. It's awkward for me to
mm,
make small talk. I don't know what to say all the time. And that's actually why studying some of the skills to ask better questions, for example, has been important to me because it is a skill that I can learn. Even though my natural tendency is introverted, I can learn the skills to open people up. And I think
mm,
that's important. A lot of leaders may say, well, oh, I'm not like that. I'm more results oriented or I'm a driver. And I say, okay, this doesn't change who you are. It's just a skill set that you may need to learn because you're in the occupation of leadership. I'm in
mm,
the occupation of working with people. If I don't know how to work with people, I'm poor at my occupation. So even though I'm an introvert, I'm in an occupation where my craft is people. If you're a leader and you're an introvert or you're a driver, you're in an occupation where your craft is people. So your responsibility is to learn the skills that allow you to do that. You can still be an introvert. You can still be a driver. You can still be someone who's obsessed about results. You can still be an engineer type thinker, but you've learned the skills to be in your occupation.
mm. I would like to ask you about the future now. And
Okay.
the question is, what is what are the most important three either skills or habits that you think every change maker or leader must have in the next decade?
I think that number one, well, first let me couch this in this
Yeah.
broader realm. I think that the number one skill that's needed for the future is the ability to build caring and trusting relationships.
Mm,
And there's a couple of reasons why. One, as you may be well aware, there's a rise of the use of artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence can do our tasks,
mm,
but it cannot take moral responsibility for them. Artificial intelligence could have produced this podcast, but it can't take responsibility for what we say. It doesn't care.
mm, mm,
Artificial intelligence cannot care for you. So only humans can care for other humans, truly care.
mm,
Artificial intelligence also cannot create a trusting relationship with you. Trust is predicted, neuroscientist Paul Zach finds that trust is predicted by oxytocin.
mm,
Um, Oxytocin is released through two humans interacting with one another. AI cannot produce long-term oxytocin release yet, right? So AI cannot build human trust.
mm,
So the number one way in which you will be replaced by AI in your job is if you don't know how to build caring and trusting relationships.
mm, mm,
And the number one way your organization will become obsolete to your customers and clients is if you don't have people that are morally responsible to them. If you don't have humans who are developing caring and trusting relationships with your clients, with your customers as humans, for example. So let's now go back to what I think is the most important skills. I think seeking understanding and seeking the interests of another and
mm,
understanding those interests is a crucial skill. One of the biggest problems I think that results in the mess that we're in right now is we've ceased to become interested in one another. And we don't even know how to come to seek understanding of one another. So I think we have to show understanding. I think that includes empathy and compassion.
mm,
I mean, I think the second is I think we need to show people how they're worthy and capable. A lot of people right now, especially here in the States, there's a lot going on. And a lot of people are saying, I just need hope. Right? I need hope. And that the future could be better. And when you look at the psychological definition of hope, hope is the belief that the future can be better, but that I'm worthy and capable of making it so.
mm,
So what's missing for a lot of people when they think about hope is they see the future, they want this future, but more people than ever feel overlooked, unvalued, unseen, unheard. They don't feel that they're worthy and capable of making that possible. And I feel like right now, being able to remind people how they're needed, remind people of their gifts around us, starting with our children, starting with our colleagues, starting with our community members, is essential for a better future. People have to believe that they matter to have hope. I mean, so I think that's an important critical skill. And then I think the third skill is being able to see yourself as an indispensable and irrefutable part of the bigger system.
Mm,
What I mean by that is too many people are saying today, I can't do anything about the system. Um, and we're too quick to give up the one source of power no one could take away from us, which is the power to show up in our next interaction and make sure the next person feels seen, heard, valued, and understood, even if we don't agree with them. We're too quick to give up
mm,
our we're too quick to give up our interactional power to the system or to politicians that don't care about us
mm,
or to bureaucracies that don't care about us. So the skill not to give up your interactional power, to reclaim your power to treat people well, to not let anybody else tell you how you should treat others is a key skill we all need to relearn.
mm. So I'm gonna say them again. Like at the core, let's say, because I like the way also you describe them. It's first of all the understanding for understanding the other person or other people, and have like deep understanding and interest and care of others, and that happens through empathy and compassion. And the second one is
Yeah.
showing others that they are worthy and capable. And the third one
Mhm.
is seeing yourself as indispensable and believe in your interactional power, and not give up or like think that all the power is for politicians and like people who are
Yeah, or
in the
just not give up
system,
your
let's say.
power to someone else.
Mm,
I think we're so quick right now, and I know this is getting a slightly political, but it's not political either way. I mean, I'm just saying that we're too quick to let other people tell us how we should treat people.
mm, mm,
We're too quick to let other people tell us how we should see people. We're too quick to give up that power, and that's something we can all reclaim as individuals in whatever sphere of politics you're in or whatever sphere of life you're in. I think we can all agree that it's a good thing to show the next person you interact with that they're noticed, affirmed, and needed.
mm,
I hope
mm,
there's not anybody out there that says, no, no, that's not a good thing. I mean, I hope everybody can just agree that that's a good thing to do, and you have the power to do it. So don't let people take that good thing away.
mm. There's this question. I'm gonna say it as it is, and I'm gonna tell you why. Zach, what positive difference do you want to make? This question was from my previous guest, John Stepper, and he asked me to ask for future guests,
Mm.
what positive difference do you want to make?
I'll go back to I want to make sure everybody I interact with realizes their own significance. I mean, that's really it. If I do that, whether I'm a parent or getting a cup of coffee somewhere, getting a package, giving a talk, if I help people to realize that they are significant and they have agency over how they show up and that almost scientifically they can't not matter,
Mm,
um, then I will have done my job. I can sleep well at night. I don't really care about what I accomplish or don't accomplish. I really don't care about how
mm,
prolific I am, how many books I write. I really don't.
mm,
That's what they say is chasing after the wind.
mm,
I don't I'm not concerned about that. I'm not concerned about popularity. Um, I'm just concerned about whether the people I interact with feel significant or not.
mm. And what is the question that you'd like to ask a future guest?
When people feel that they matter to you, what are you doing?
Okay, I expected it, to be honest.
I had to flip it around in my brain. When people
Yeah.
feel that they matter to you, what are you doing? I mean,
Mm,
Simon Sinek in his when he originally started his Start With Why stuff, he had a question that he would tell people to go ask their friends, why are you friends with me? And that's the way you
mm,
find your purpose, find your why. But it's the same thing. I mean, ask yourself, when the people around you feel that they matter to you, what are you doing?
mm.
And that will help you see your own gifts and see how you matter.
Mm. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about? This is an open question about the future of work that, like, other than the skills and the habits that we need to develop, that is important to think about with all the changes that's happening.
No, I think we covered a lot. I think that one of the things that I think that cannot lose sight of is that how people make meaning in work inevitably affects how they make meaning in life, even if we don't want to admit it. So the health of our society, you can't have a healthy society with unhealthy workplaces, because that is where people go and spend one third of their one waking life. That is where they develop beliefs about themselves that affect how they treat their children, their partners, their parents, their elders, their community members. It affects their habits at home, whether they want to check out or lean in because of the day they just experienced. So I think that that is so crucial that we get back to remembering work's place and not just a place where people go to earn a paycheck, but a place that is central and pivotal to health and well-being in society.
Mm. The last question I'm gonna ask you now is, how do you celebrate life? At work or outside of
How
work?
do I celebrate?
Life.
I like being outside. I like being outside. I like having a good when I have the time to make and drink a good espresso, and just sit and enjoy with some silent time
Mm.
and not doing anything, not have a phone in front of me, not even have anything in front of me, just sit and be just for a moment. That's celebration for me.
How often do you do
I
this?
just like sitting and watching my kids play.
Okay.
Oh, every day.
Okay,
Every
perfect.
day.
Yeah. Mm.
If you make a cup of coffee, you have time to celebrate.
Mm.
Takes 4 minutes for my French press coffee, right? And I just sit there, and
Mm.
it's great. I just am
Mm.
there. I'm
Mm.
like, "Wow, I'm in a kitchen. It's warm. I can smell the coffee. My kids are safe. They're in school." Like that. That's it.
Mm. You reminded me that of a study, if I remember correctly, the happiest people, they have between 2 to 5 hours every day that they have control over. So it doesn't mean that they don't work in these two,
Ah,
like two
uh-huh.
to five hours, but these like 2 to 5 hours that are free for them, they can do whatever these 2 to 5 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very lucky and privileged to have that, but I will say that, one of the people I worked with was a janitor in one of our studies. She's a cleaner. She works these really long, grueling shifts. And one of the things she does on her breaks, she worked in the university dormitories, and she would where there's lots of students. And during her break, she would bring her crocheting stuff, and she'd crochet winter hats for all the students in her dormitory that she was cleaning that term, like one or two each time until she did one for all of them. And then she'd go deliver them. And she said she did that. I asked, why did you do that? She goes, oh, when I go to my car in the winter and I see just one student wearing one of these hats, I'm reminded of why my job exists.
Mm.
And I love that because it's also even in the midst of a very busy time where your time is controlled by someone else, you can find little intentional moments to do something worthwhile, to do something that celebrates even your job that you don't like. She did not like her job, right? But she liked seeing the impact of her job,
Mm.
and I think that getting off the phone, getting off the scroll, and just sitting in a break room and being with your colleagues and taking an interest in their life, is a way that you can celebrate life.
Mm.
Because I work with a lot of people on the front line that don't have the luxury as I do to maybe sit with a cup of coffee. But what I find is that people are happiest are the ones that take control over the moments they do have
Mm.
and don't give them to an algorithm.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, that's something on its own that I had an experience this last month. I went to a 10-day retreat, and without my phone, it was a totally different life because I was not. My phone was taken away for 10 days, and this is something that you can only experience. I mean, you cannot describe. Yes.
Yeah, I know. For me, it just even like when I feel that urge to go check something or to scroll, like just not,
Mm.
and how much better that subsequent 10 minutes of my life are. objectively, even if I'm not even doing anything but sitting at a table eating a sandwich. It is immense. So I actually think that's really important to the conversation that we're having, because I think that you have to have the energy to show people how they matter if you want to do this. You have to be appreciative of your own life. You have to notice yourself. You have to remind yourself how you're needed to do this for others. And if you don't create those spaces of reflection to do that, it's very hard to do anything that we talked about.
And thank you for this reflection, Zach. I'm really
Yeah,
grateful.
thanks. It's a good reflection
I'm
for
really,
me too.
I'm really grateful to getting to know you, to have this conversation with you. Um, I was really, as I told you, I was prepared. Like I knew about your work, but this conversation always, like when I have a conversation with you, it's different from knowing about your work and listening to what you talked about in the past. And we talked about so many important things, of course, the intention behind the power of mattering. You gave so many examples, also the difference between inclusion mattering and belonging first, and so many stories and examples. We also talked about the future of work. Now, as I told you, I don't have any more questions. I will just give you the space if you'd like to say any final thoughts.
No, just thank you for your interest. And for those who listen, thanks for taking the time to listen.
Congratulations for listening until the end. You are in the top 25% of listeners. Studies show that we forget up to 70% of what we hear within 24 hours. But when we repeat an insight by sharing it with someone, commenting, or journaling it, it moves into long-term memory. So now tell me, what are your 1 to 3 takeaways you're keeping from this conversation? Enjoy every moment. Until next time.